One of the leading figures of the American church in the last century was Archbishop Fulton Sheen, and he died in the year 1979 to give you a sense of his place in the century. He was the first Catholic churchman to use radio and television to great effect in spreading the gospel, and he was a man of great learning and wisdom. And I'd like to share with you one of his outstanding quotes, and please listen to this carefully. If you do not worship God, you worship something, and 9 times out of 10 it will be yourself. You have a duty to worship God, not because he will be imperfect and unhappy if you do not, but because you will be imperfect and unhappy if you do not. This is a fundamental truth of the Christian life, and indeed of a happy and fulfilled life in itself. God made us for himself. He made us as his children. We were made for relationship with God. And if we take ourselves out of that relationship with God, it's like a fish taking himself out of water. Things are not going to go well. St. Augustine summed it up, and this was the summary of his life and indeed the life of humanity. He says, "You made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee." The first of the 10 Commandments says, God speaking, "First, I am the Lord thy God. I will not have strange gods before me." And biblical scholars tell us that the other 9 commandments are some other variation of the first about not doing idolatry. So Lent is a time of spiritual renewal, it's a time of reflection, and it's an opportunity for us to look at our lives and see if there is any areas of self-worship and to try to root them out as best we can. Now, today's gospel talks about the 3 temptations of Jesus by the devil. And we can see each of these temptations as different aspects of how self-worship can creep into our life. The first temptation of Jesus is towards worldly pleasure. He is fasting and he's tempted to, by his power, to turn stones into bread. For ourselves, just think of all the ads on television and buses and radio and every place else that are trying to get us to indulge ourselves in the goods of this world. And Jesus' response to Satan is very emphatic. He says, "Man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." So Jesus is saying to us that it's the good things that come from God and not the good things of the world that ultimately bring true fulfillment. Again, it's back to St. Augustine. "You made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee." And practical examples of this harmful pleasure that is so much a part of modern life and indeed scourges in themselves is pornography, that's a big one, drugs and drunkenness. The second temptation is towards power and worldly influence, control over the kingdoms of the world. The only problem is that if Jesus is to accept this power, he has to worship the devil. If we seek power and worldly influence for ourselves, we too may have to sell our soul to the devil, and that's a very worrying prospect. Jesus says, "You shall worship the Lord your God and serve him alone." Jesus says on a similar note elsewhere in the gospel, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and to lose his soul. A practical example of this are the many modern politicians, and particularly back in Ireland, who turned from being pro-life to being pro-choice in order to get elected into public office and to fit in and be a part of the modern world. The third temptation is for Jesus to make of himself a great celebrity. He's invited by the devil to throw himself off the top of the temple, a very high building, and then angels will come and they'll rescue Jesus, and there'll be a big round of applause, and Jesus will be famous, and he'll get all kinds of likes on Facebook, etc. Jesus' response again is emphatic. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. We are to worship God and not worship the creature. Self-worship is very much a part of the modern celebrity culture, and it's all before us on secular television, it's on newspapers, social media, music, sports, entertainment, etc. Now, the right way to counter this is by the wonderful virtue of humility, and John the Baptist sums this up beautifully in one of the verses of the Gospel, where he says about Jesus avoiding pride and vanity. He said, he must increase, Jesus must increase, and I must decrease. Now, at times we do get deserved praise or commendation for something well that we have done, and the right way to treat that is to say, to God be the glory. Everything that we have is a gift from God, and if we didn't have the gift of our life, then we wouldn't even exist. So I'd like to suggest some homework for the week to come. Look at your life and see if your relationship with Jesus is being affected by any of these tendencies to self-worship, namely the pursuit of pleasure, the wrong pursuit of pleasure, power, and seeking worldly approval. We are to worship God rather than ourselves.